So that's it for the details on the UVM side of things. And if anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to talk about them.
Just a reminder, everyone, feel free to turn your video on at this point since we're not presenting if you would like, and also just turn it on whenever you're asking questions. So Mary Beth, I see that you have a question, maybe? Don't forget to unmute.
Sorry,
oh, there you go.
I don't have a hand raise option. So anyway, thanks for seeing that. I have two questions. One is, I'm curious about in the COVID environment that the facility is working with, how will that impact what Kathy and Abby and the person in the facility will need to do? Like, will there be any limitations? Will they have to do it via video? And then my second question relates to, you know, I having run many programs in a prison setting. One of the big challenges is getting engagement, people to engage. And so I'm wondering if there's any talk about compensating people or providing incentives or, you know, really showing that reciprocity and valuing people's time. So, because I think that creates a level of engagement that's really off the charts. So those are my two questions.
Abby and Kathy, yep, I knew it.
I can answer, I think both of them. With respect to COVID, I mean, at the moment, they're slowly starting to let people back in, contractors and such. So Abby and I will be tested weekly, and we're waiting for that. I think it's going to happen Monday, and then we'll be in the following week. And then we have been given a list of protocol that we have to follow, which are the basic common sense things that everybody has to follow. And we fully expect that over the course of this project, there may be times where Mike says, no, sorry, you can't come in anymore. But he has a situation ready where there would be a video conferencing room that would be private, so that, a staff member would help set it up, but then leave the room so there would be confidentiality, and it would be this sort of format, I think, probably a Teams meeting where we could conduct the interviews that way. So we do have a backup plan, and we're actually delighted that at least it's looking like we're going to be able to get inside, and that's really because Vermont has managed this so well. I mean, compared to some other places where I don't know if they'll be allowed, it might all have to be remote, and with
Kathy, you just muted yourself.
Sorry, I don't know how I did that. Weird. With regard to engaging people, it is always a challenge. One of the benefits of the kickoff was we sort of got people excited about the idea and explained the whole project. And I think the fact that they understood that it was going to be really consultative with them, that wasn't going to be a top-down thing. It was going to be ground up in the sense that we're not, DOC management is not telling us what questions to ask. We're asking them what questions should we ask before we even ask them. So I think the nature of the project will get some engagement. DOC has agreed to pay staff for their time for the focus groups and the research councils. And the requirements, if you're doing research with incarcerated individuals, the federal law says that you can't compensate them. I think so that they won't feel coerced, because any kind of compensation might be too tempting or something. But we are allowed to give things like snacks, special snacks, and but they get it whether they participate or not, so that it won't be coercive. So that's one of the things that you have to go through with the Institutional Review Board, is to make sure that you're following those sorts of rules. But I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that, but those are my responses.
Sure, yeah, this is Lauren from Urban again. I just like to say like being part of this executive committee is also ensuring that there is a benefit to participating, and just making sure that people who are suggesting changes or letting us know intimate details of their life or something that's wrong are heard and that their innovations are implemented. So I think that's something we should carry with us as well, as it depends on us whether or not there is actual compensation for this, going beyond monetary or food compensation.
Good point.
Okay, any other
Can
questions?
Can I just add one more thing? Just that I feel very strongly that, you know I hear the federal requirements and everything, but I also feel strongly that part of culture change is doing things differently, and that really valuing people's time, especially people who are incredibly vulnerable and low income, and thinking about, how do we do this in a way that's not coercive, certainly, but is valuing their time and their input and providing something in reciprocity for that, no matter what it is. So I'll just leave it there, but that's something I feel really strongly about.
I think that's absolutely something to continue to keep in mind. And I think that what Lauren also mentioned, part of valuing their time and their effort is listening to them and bringing that information forward and potentially creating change from it. So I really hope that resonates strongly with staff and incarcerated individuals at Southern State, and then of course across all of Vermont once we're able to apply it statewide. Any other questions right now? I know we threw a lot of information at everybody.
Seems like Alice that your hand is raised.
Alice, yes.
Yes, I want to thank you for taking this on. And I also know that the Council of State Governments is continuing working with us on Justice Reinvestment 2. So I would be interested in knowing how these two, the Urban Institute information as well as Justice Reinvestment 2 information, how that gets coordinated, so that maybe we're not at cross purposes. We can, work together hand in glove, because one will help the other. The other part that I'm really wondering about, because you're doing this in a few other states. Here in Vermont, we have a unified system where we hold detainees as well as sentenced. And that sometimes changes the dynamics, where other states do not hold detainees under the state system. They're held under a county system. And that would be one factor that I'm curious if you're going to see a difference with the other pilot projects in the other states. The second thing, the Springfield facility is a facility that houses a lot of our geriatric population and our mental health population. And those are going to be very challenging populations in any correctional system. So I'd be very interested to see what you come up, what data you receive, and program initiatives that we should undertake for those populations. We also have a regular general population there, but the bulk is mental health and geriatrics. So it's a very complex population that's held in Springfield that might be different than the other facilities that you're looking at in the other pilot projects. So I just wanted to bring those two items up. Thank you.
So for the justice reinvestment part, I will ask Monica Weber. She's worked a lot with justice reinvestment to address how that and this project can pull together, and then we'll address the other points.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't with you all when the meeting started, so I didn't get to introduce myself. I'm Monica Weber, the Administrative Director for the Department of Corrections. And as Jess said, been working with my counterpart, Dale Crook, on Justice Reinvestment 2 implementation, and regularly working and now talking with our implementation team from the Council of State Governments. And I know at one point during the presentation, somebody mentioned the steering committee that meets on a regular basis. And at our last steering committee, we did talk about the fact that we need to have some overlap between what's happening with justice reinvestment implementation and this particular project. I will say that a lot of justice reinvestment right now is very focused on changes to field and field supervision, and that this project is very focused on facility and facility culture. Not that those two are unconnected, they are very much connected, because we understand the transition that goes, that happens between field and facility on a very regular basis. And I think that did actually come up when we were in Southern State in February, related to the kickoff of the project. So we will also be doing a fair amount of work on justice reinvestment around developing measures and performance measures, around violations and how we supervise people. So I think that we will have to make sure that we're looking at those things and developing the system so that it can support both of the projects, but also keep them a little distinct. I think at our next meeting of the steering committee, we actually decided we were going to talk about what was happening with justice reinvestment too, to make sure that we made those connections. So that's the briefest answer I could give to you today.
Thank you, Monica. I see Al, you have something to add?
Yeah, I think part of this survey is going to pull some of that out around release planning. I know there's a lot of frustration from the incarcerated population around releases, and some of the holdups with releases. So I think as we start digging into the culture inside, it's going to affect them getting out. So there may be some crossover there that we can work together on between these two projects. So I think what we find for information in the data and the research could drive a lot of JRI to see where we need to go with it based on what we're hearing from the inside.
Yeah, that's a really good point, particularly because, you know, releases will hopefully be really driven a lot to the changes in presumptive parole and the changes that we're also making around just being eligible for release on furlough.
Jesse, do you? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I want to acknowledge, Jesse, I see that your hand is raised as well. But we have a discussion, and I think everything that anyone has said so far really would work well with the discussion. And just if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to set us off with some ground rules before we continue. And then after I do that, I'll open it up for input onto ground rules, and then I'll call on you, Jesse, first, and then we'll start with the planned topics. I'm seeing some head nods. I'm going to take that as an okay. Great, so these were on the agenda as well, but I'll just walk through them. If you have any questions, please use the chat, raise your hand, or just wave at me, and I will call on you. So 1, our primary commitment is to learn from each other and make this effort stronger. That means during these conversations, we will listen to each other and not talk at each other. We will acknowledge differences between us in backgrounds, skills, interests, and values. We realize that that is these differences that will increase our awareness and understanding through this process. 2, take space, make space. This means that we will create an environment for everyone to contribute. So if you speak once, maybe twice, then allow other people to speak and join the conversation. 3 is participate fully. This means that we let go of all of the other things that we should be doing, need to be doing, feel like we need to do right now, and make sure that we're fully present for each other and focus on what we're doing here. And the 4th is that we use I statements, which means we will tell our experiences and our perspectives, but that we will not assume that anyone else feels the same way. Are there any other ground rules that you all enjoy during discussions? Okay, great. I will pass it back to Jesse for your comment.
Yeah, and I was Representative Emmons going to respond quickly to maybe even a little bit all three of the things that you raised. One is just to let everybody know that our team has also proactively done outreach to the CSG folks who are providing assistance through JRI, assuming that a line of communication there and each of our teams being aware of what the other is up to would be helpful, both on the big picture level and also some basic things like, when do we need to go to the state for data and what are we looking for, knowing that the bandwidth for some of that can be limited. So just to say that that's another point of connection that we're working on making. I think your point about the distinction of Vermont being a unified system is to the point of, well, I think I mentioned at the top, so Delaware, which is participating in the project, is also a unified system, but as I understand it, at their pilot facility, they do the housing separately for people who are quote unquote prison population versus jail population. So at least the last time we checked on that, it wasn't clear actually that they would be including the quote unquote jail population in the survey. I think it will be different. One of the things that may be challenging is since that more, jail population pretrial detainees often turns over more. It might be particularly a challenge to get folks in that situation represented in the research councils, because I think what may matter to them, what they may think is important to know, may be different than the sentence population, and that will be. It will make it different. I think we may not even know exactly how. And then I guess the last thing, mentioning, and this is something that we certainly noticed when we attended to when we toured Southern, is that, the population that is geriatric or medically vulnerable or has mental health challenges is there. And I think that particularly for the participatory work really puts the onus on us to figure out how to make sure that we've got a plan for administering the survey that makes sure that we're able to include their perspectives, while making sure that we're also being really attentive to making sure that, their consent to participate is fully informed. That is something that we talked about even in the early, on the site visit meetings with people who are incarcerated, is how to think about making sure that we're doing a good job of inclusion on that front.
Thank you, Jesse. And I am also aware of the time. It makes me wonder if we should jump, Lauren, into maybe some of these discussion questions where other questions that the group has will also kind of bubble up. So Lauren, do you want to start with the hopes and opportunities?
Yeah, I think that would be great. So I want to acknowledge that we are all here for a reason, and that we all sit on the executive committee for our own goals for Vermont or justice reform in general or research purposes, but we all come with our own goals. And I'd like to just open this up so that we can all state our goals for this project, and how this project can play into other work that you are personally doing or promoting in Vermont, so that we can kind of get on the same page of what our goals can be together. And I would also say you can use the raise hand function, chat, or speak. And I will try to make sure that we don't speak over each other. And just to, okay, thank you, Tim. I see that your hand is raised.
My technological experience is not that good, but first of all, my name's Tim Burgess. I'm an advocate for people who have been incarcerated, are incarcerated, or in the community under supervision. And where I feel I can probably provide the best information, having been a guest of the state and having been on facilitate making in the initial stages the survey questions there. But I'm happy to do, having had the experience, and it's been some time since I've been incarcerated, but having sort of helping those who need a voice, or if you have a question about how something works, that's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I'm happy to narrow this down a bit more in terms of if you have any specific goals for transforming prisons as the project is colloquially named at Urban. And again, just the follow-up on that is what role you'd like to play in that and through this project, transforming prisons.
I'll jump in. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I've always been kind of that, just jump in. So, in my role as the facilities executive, for me, being responsible for all 6 Vermont facilities and the out-of-state facility, it's important for me to address that culture. And 26 years with the department, seen a lot of change, and I've seen a lot of frustrating behavior. Things that shouldn't be happening, and we're in a place now where we can make that change, and we've got the momentum, we've got the drive, we've got an awesome executive committee here that knows where we should be and can assist us in getting where we should be. So I'm just excited to have that ability to finally do something. 26 years in leadership roles without always feeling you've had a voice. So it feels like we've got a voice now, and I think we can move this forward. And as I'd said in the opening when we met in Waterbury in February, we've looked a lot at the European prison models. We looked at some of the Western states and their prison models, but we really need to look at the Vermont model and make this the go-to standard. We have shown that we can do good things with our COVID response. We're now looked at nationally from how we responded to that pandemic and how we continue to respond to it. I think we can do the same with the culture in our prison. Lofty goals, I know, but I think we're at a point where we can actually meet them.
Thank you, Al. You're always very inspirational. I see that Dr. Lorelei Emmons raised your hand virtually, and then I will also note that Judy and Representative Redmond's raised their hands. So I'll call on Dr. Lorelei first, then Representative Redmond, and then Judy.
You're on mute, Dr. Emmons.
Oh, you're still on mute, I think.
Wrong one. Okay. Sorry about that. Technically challenged. I do want to put forth to the group that as the healthcare partner for the Vermont DOC, this is an incredible opportunity as far as improvement with that juncture. And we like to think of ourselves as continually improving in that regard and manner, and being able to be a part of that opportunity that we could share not only in Vermont, but nationwide is just a really, really positive aspect, I feel. So we have great hopes that there will be good things that come forward from the information gained, and that we can implement some of those as well. So that was all I wanted to add today.
Thank you for your contribution. And before I move on to Dr. Redmond, I'd like to also pose other people to begin thinking about or include in your own response that you're about to give, any concerns or potential challenges you see with this project. And now I pass it on to Representative Redmond.
Thanks again. I would say I would hold 2 aspirations or goals. And one would be, I really appreciated what Jesse said about this being a moment where because of everything rising up in the national conversation around racial justice and disparities, I would really hope we can use that energy to really laser down on that in our correctional facilities and really look at how to improve the situation for people of color. I think this is an incredible moment for us. So how do we do that? How do we get at that? And then the other thing I would say is, it just went out of my head. I know. Look, I really feel like having worked for 10 years in a facility and seeing the relationships and interactions, I really feel like a fundamental goal of culture change must come at the level of the person incarcerated and the person who is supervising them. There is a deep culture shift that needs to happen at that nexus point because it's set up in a punitive way now. And for women especially, that doesn't work at all. So looking at how to shift or transform that fundamental relationship, I think is a critical piece in this. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Representative Redmond. Judy?
Hi, I'm not muted, I think. I came into corrections, Mike Touchette. One of the reasons I came is he talked about the change that he wanted to happen. And I did look around and I looked at some of the things like the Norwegian model and what they were doing in Oregon, and met with a group of the women commissioners last summer, and kind of thought about how we could tailor it to Vermont. And when this came about, some of the attraction is that we're a small enough state that it's not just in a lot of bigger states, they maybe can do a facility or a little entity or a portion of what they do. I think we have the opportunity, Al calls it the Vermont model, but tailor what we see out there to our needs. And I also think coming in from, I was once the prisoner's rights attorney, John Gorsuch's reform years, and there's been a lot of reform efforts. And what I want to see come of this is something that lasts. And that's why I think capitalizing on that energy that's out there now and not looking at business as usual. We have some new blood in corrections. We have some not business as usual mindset. And because there's been great things that happen and then they get set aside. So what I want to see out of this is something that is really going to keep with us into the future or build on it and not regress again.
Thank you, Judy. We absolutely agree. We have a discussion topic actually that is just about sustainability and how we can build that together. So I'm glad you brought that up. Are there any challenges that you all see considering Vermont's landscape that you all know much better than we do? And I say we urban at this point. And challenges, but also how we can overcome them together.
This is Becca. Can I go? Becca Ballant?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think a challenge, not just with this work, but all the work that we do in Vermont, is that Vermont can be very provincial and everybody knows each other in some capacity. And you try to make a change and then you realize so-and-so is so-and-so's cousin, so-and-so used to live next door to whatever. And then it becomes a much more personal issue as opposed to systemic change issue. And I've seen that in my community. I've seen that in my county. I've certainly seen that across the state in my role as a senator, where you feel like you can make some change, and then it comes up against this this very small nature of the world that is Vermont, and I worry about that. So.
Thank you for sharing. I see a lot of heads nodding as well, so there seems to be very much agreement about that. Alice, I see that your hand is raised.
I'm chair of the House committee that deals with policies for DOC, but also we deal with the boring part of buildings. And my goal is always to make sure that the buildings are appropriate for the policy. And I know that people think buildings are just concrete walls, whatever. But my thinking with DOC is, and I don't think this is something that the project could look at because you're within our newest facility. But if you want to change the culture, this is how I'm feeling. If you really want to change some of the culture on a day-to-day basis within our facilities, some of our facilities need to change. They're outdated for what is needed for the offender, and they're outdated for what is needed for the staff. And we've got to bite that bullet on the state level on our policy making and our legislative branch to really put money where our mouth is. And when you're looking in at the Springfield facility, that facility may be more adaptable than some of our others, but I would really like to include in the culture change, which we need, how that is being limited by our buildings. Because I think that there's a real connection there.
Thank you, Alice. And I think that's also one of the beauties of this project is that there are so many different perspectives and solutions that we'll come up with together and with people who are living and working in prison. And I'm sure that will come up as well. Al, I will pass it on to you, and then I will move us on to building in sustainability to this project.
Thank you. To Alice's point, there's a feasibility study that's currently underway with DOC and BGS around the potential for a new facility to be built in Vermont. And as I think about this and to listen to your comments, Representative, part of that is because Judy and I were both on the committee when we picked the vendor for that and looking at the RFPs, there's going to be a lot of discussion with DOC on what is needed. So I think as we move forward with this project and listening to that culture, that's a good, we can bring a lot of what we find in this to that RFP and that feasibility study as we do move forward. So hopefully will impact and produce what we need in a new facility, should we ever see one.
Thank you all. So now that we've heard some of the hopes and concerns, especially regarding, where change stops sometimes in Vermont, I'd love us to consider what we can do as the accountability board, basically, of this project. And when we hear the innovations that are coming out of SSCF, what can we do to ensure that they're implemented? That might seem like a big question. Small ideas are great too. We can break it down further. Let me try to do this differently. I see Abby is going to answer instead, so I'll pass it on to Abby.
Maybe not answer, just add my 2 cents when I think about, as we're on the brink of getting started with this work, one of the big things that I think is important for the buy-in and sustainability is having the right platform to share the results with, because going back to sort of the folks that we're working with inside the facility are really, I think the thing that will help them feel better about their participation is if we listen to what they say. And it's not just sort of a report that ends up on a desk somewhere and is like, oh, I did that last year and nothing happened. It will make everyone more hesitant to participate in the next ask and the next change. So if we want to sort of start or contribute to the culture of change right now, I think it's being cognizant of this as an opportunity and setting it up so that we really have this great perspective of folks working and incarcerated in this facility, and how can we as this diverse group make sure that information spreads across different systems, across different efforts, and across different roles, so we can use this to make that next change. And I'm interested in how this group wants that information, how we, as the data gatherers right now, can help share and communicate that.
Thank you, Abby. Does the group or any individual actually have suggestions for how communication can be done to support this effort? Yes, Representative Redmond.
I feel like I'm talking too much, but I'm a communications person, so I'll share my 2 cents. I would say rather than like a big report or a big kind of dump of information, like small bursts of updates and, little kind of piecemeal. I think I know for those of us in the legislature, that is so much easier to digest than, kind of a big dump of information at once. So if there are things that you're seeing, that, trends, things, like just kind of sending those out periodically would be wonderful.
I think being able to share the information from our biweekly meetings as we move forward with being inside the facility, there will certainly be a lot more to share than there has been in the last few months. So that may be just sharing highlights of those biweekly meetings with the executive committee, keep everybody updated on what is happening.
Thank you. And specifically just thinking about Vermont and the projects that you have all seen, I want you to think about, 1 or 2 of the most successful projects you've seen or culture changes, and what were the characteristics of those projects, or what do you think made it succeed? And then with that information, I can kind of we can bring it into this project. And I see Tim, your hand went up.
I think one of the pieces is to share this with the people who are incarcerated, but their families. And that could be I think Al knows, I'm working with a person here, Jennifer, to make sure that those communication lines are open better. And if we can use the data we get here and send it down those communication lines, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Tim. And for those that don't know, we've set up a constituency management unit within the department, mostly around being able to share information around COVID and what's happening, to let family members know what is going on inside of our prison. And we've really enhanced it with the outbreak in Mississippi. But that unit is here to stay. So I think that could be a good venue to share that information with those family members.
Thank you, the both of you. I think that's a great idea as well. And Jesse, I see you've put in the chat. Do you mind if I read it off? Just a nod or, okay. Thumbs up, nod works. Jesse has said, one thing that would also be great to know is how you'd like to connect with the other sites, on what topics, and with what kind of peers. Maybe let's just start with how you'd like to connect with other sites. And feel free to respond in the chat as well. Hi, yes, Senator.
So I guess I have a question first about that. Is there an opportunity for the other sites to give regular feedback to each other along the way? When this project has happened in other ways, in other forms, or projects like it, what extent has there been regular communication between it?
Jesse?
I mean, I think there's the possibility for quite a bit. And in a lot of ways, we've ended up kind of slow starting that aspect of this project just because every state and everybody has been in crisis management mode for most of the time that this project has been going. And I think so. One of the reasons I wanted to ask is I think we can be responsive to as much of that as people are signaling that they want, and that they're ready for both. You know, you want to focus on making what you want to have happen in Vermont first. So it's a question of like how much bandwidth beyond what that takes. And then, you know, who wants that and around what. I think, you know, often that's really helpful. I think it's a matter of kind of, yeah, when are people ready for it, and what kind of topics do they want to engage around? But I think we're ready to make as much of that happen as you all task us with.
Thank you, Jesse. Tim, I see that your hand is up. Quickly, I will just say thank you so much for all participating in this discussion. Once Tim responds, we will pass it on to Jess to give some updates and next steps about communication, and then leave time for close just to respect the time we said we were at end. But Tim, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the issues that I hear here, I'm very fortunate to be included in a group of people who are really looking at the living situations in Vermont, being a former inmate. So I don't know, sort of a question, I guess, more than anything. Are other partners in this program doing the same thing? Do they have either a family person or former inmate or that can share these ideas? That's all.
I think that's a great idea. Why not? So we're taking notes on everything that's been said as well. So thank you so much. And Tim, you've been an incredible resource so far for the project, and we're definitely lucky to have you. So yes, once again, thank you for all participating in the discussion. I feel like we could talk for another hour. I won't do that to you all. And I'm excited for the day when we can all meet in person. I will pass it back to Jessica for quick next steps, and then Al for closing.
All right, everybody. So some next steps, as you saw in the email and the calendar invite, I had updated an executive committee charter. It reviews this project as pretty much what was covered in the presentations. I will be sending after this the meeting notes, probably early next week, the recording, and I will be giving next steps about the charter. Basically just read and sign the charter, electronic signature, whatever method you have, and then I will combine it all into one document, knowing that we can't all just sit and sign it in person like we would have done. I will also be asking everyone in that email what typical days and times, I know that sounds like no one has a typical work day, but would work for the future meeting, so we can maybe schedule something November, January, and March, as Abby had mentioned. So I'll just be getting feedback on that instead of having to do like a doodle poll or something like that every single time. And then also, excitingly, so we've been adding a lot of data aspects to our website. I'm putting that out there because I'm the data person for the department, so I want you all to know. But aside from that, we will also be adding a page for this project. So I will be listing everyone here, saying that you were all part of the executive committee, putting the videos on there, and just presentations, communications, anything that we can put publicly out there, just to, again, gain momentum and keep everyone engaged. So stay tuned for that as well. So basically, you'll be getting an email from me. At this point, no one has to worry about anything until you get the email from me for the next steps. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Al to finish this off.
Great. Thanks, Jess. And thank you, everyone. I just want to thank everyone for your time today. I know that trying to find time during these crazy times is very difficult. And I think for a lot of us, it feels like we're busier at home than we ever were in the office, and trying to find time to take 2 hours is certainly appreciated. But I'm glad you all find the value in this project, agreed to participate and be a part of this with us. And I look forward to moving forward and seeing that culture change that we've all been looking for. So thank you. Appreciate it, and have a great weekend.
Way to end us early, Al. Great work.
2 minutes left. We got 2 minutes.
A great leader, everyone.
2 minutes wisely, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good weekend.
You as well.